And now, it's my pleasure to hand things over to our moderator, Sarah Blakley-Cartwright, for New Forms of Heartbreak.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's the most beautiful book festival day in recent memory. I don't know if you've all braved the weather the last few years, but thank you for being here on this beautiful day in this very intimidating room. I feel like we should be discussing more pressing matters than... But then again, what's more pressing than heartbreak? We might need to issue a verdict at the end of who's the most guts on the floor. Okay, so we have Eimear McBride here. Eimear is the author of 4 novels, A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, The Lesser Bohemians, Strange Hotel, and The City Changes Its Face. She held the inaugural Creative Fellowship at the Beckett Research Center, University of Reading, and is the recipient of the Women's Prize for Fiction, Goldsmiths Prize, Carey Prize, and the James Tate Black Memorial Prize. Then we have Katie. Beside her, Katie Yee is a writer from Brooklyn. She's received fellowships from the Center for Fiction, the Asian American Writers Workshop, and Kundiman. Her work has appeared in the LA Review of Books, No Tokens, The Believer, the Washington Square Review, Triangle House, Epiphany, and Lit Hub. By day, she works at the Brooklyn Museum. By night, she writes, usually under the watch of her judgmental rescue dog, Ollie. Her first novel, Maggie, or A Man and a Woman Walk into a Bar, was published by Summit Books in July 25. And last, we have Alejandro Varela's debut novel, The Town of Babylon, was a finalist for the National Book Award. His short story collection, The People Who Report More Stress, was one of Publishers Weekly's Best Works of Fiction in 2023, a finalist for the International Latino Book Awards, and longlisted for the Aspen Literary Prize, the Story Prize, and the Penn Gene Stein Book Award. He's an editor-at-large of Apogee Journal, holds a master's degree in public health, and is based in New York. Middle Spoon is his newest novel. So I think it was just mentioned, but just to remind you guys that books by the authors will be purchased from Books on Call New York afterwards, and authors will be signing their books immediately following. And authors, at the conclusion of this program, please go directly to your signing tables. Great. So, there we go. We thought that we would begin with each of the authors just reading very, very short excerpt, the first page of their book, to give you a taste. Yeah, let's start with Eimear.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. So I'm going to read a little bit. There's a lot of white space on my first page, so I'm going to read the first 2 pages, but it should come up to about 1. This is City Changed Its Face, and it's set in Camden Town in London in 1996 on a cold, rainy night. The city changes its face as I tap at my teeth, rain going delinquent beyond in the street and all over him closing the door. Sorry I'm late and in from the night, the winter on his body making inroads to mine. Cold lips white, under fingernails blue. Why are you sitting in the window? Waiting? For what? Just for you. His smile then, and I smile back. Well, let me just get this wet coat off. Are you soaked? To the skin. You should get changed. Well, I think I will. But first my cheek under his wet palm on my hair. How are you doing? Fine. You? The spareliest of nods, and all right too. Then kiss my mouth, his, kiss again, the smell of his damp hair and rain on my hand. I'll get dried off then. Cup of tea? Yeah, I'll put the kettle on. But my eye goes through him for his state of mind, and that quick glance, turned, eyebrow itch, turned to yawn is gauging, I think, when he thinks I can't see. How is she? Fine? Or she seems okay? Good. Tick. Now? Fine. Good. Tick again. Out of care, I know, but dismiss as whim his carefulness of me. Sidestepping it so, and out of real interest ask, so how was the show tonight? Not bad, actually. Many people in? Full house, far as I could make out. And many round after? 1 or 2? Anyone there you knew? Thankfully not. And the others? We're all heading out for a drink, but I didn't fancy it. I wouldn't have minded. Wasn't really in the mood. Besides, it was pissing down, so... But already halfway down the hall, the frozen lank of him cutting the corner to vanish off into our room. A glass floor wrap. Time to relinquish the street. All those rushers in their dashes from the gutter spouts of taxis. It is downpour Camden, drenching city, and night like I like best.
That was so beautiful, Eimear. Okay, just from the beginning. I was folding linens when I first found out my children don't think I'm funny. I was by the hall closet, overhearing them asking my husband for a bedtime story. This was after I'd already read them Where the Wild Things Are, a book they used to love so much the pages were starting to pull from their binding. He reminded them of this, a good husband, and they told him, you'd tell it better, and so he did, a better father. The thing I noticed that was peculiar about my husband's telling was that the characters are all out of sorts. Max doesn't sail away from his room in the usual boat. A bald boy named Harold shows up, paddling past in an ill-drawn dinghy, clutching a purple crayon. As my husband tells it, they sail off together but lose their way. They float for what feels like days until they happen upon an island they come to know as Neverland, where a ragtag gang of boys their age pulls them in. They were lost boys all along, go figure. It became a bad habit. I'd read them their story, kiss their sweaty foreheads, try not to step on Lincoln logs on the way out. I'd tread downstairs, begin to soak the pots and pans, and then I'd stand in the hall, at the bottom of the staircase, listening to them beg my husband for a better story. It was a small betrayal. Night after night, he'd pluck a character from one book and drop it in another. The mismatchedness made them laugh. It's unexpected. It's not right. That's what makes it fun. Little Red Riding Hood turning up at her grandmother's house only to find not Grandma, not the wolf, no, but Sleeping Beauty instead. And my kids are in fits over it. It hurts in an unexpected way, like doing yoga for the first time in a long while and realizing you can't bend the way you thought you could, a new soreness.
Hi. Thanks for being here for this coveted 5 p.m. hour on a Sunday. What you need to know is that the narrator's been dumped. Dear Ben, I'm sipping Amaro, the one you like to drink before bed, the bottle with the cap made of melted wax. It's an extravagant pour. I'm lucid but intoxicated. Before the digestif, there were 2 glasses of sake. Before that, 2 martinis. There was a plate of food too, mostly protein. I'm not telling you this for the sake of telling you. I guess in a way I'm preparing you. Wait a second. Before this very moment, it had never occurred to me that sake, the Japanese drink made of fermented rice, and sake, noun, meaning for the purpose of, are heteronyms. Odd to have missed this connection. That was a stupid way to begin an email. Honest, but stupid. Let me try again.
Great. I think you got a great sense of the 3 different voices in the novels, and such an exciting panel with such 3 different books, different angles. So you might imagine that Heartbreak would just obliterate form. We think of it just destroying everything in its path. In these books, it's the opposite. It's sort of generative in a way. It reinvents language and form. It either comes out sort of all scrambled in sort of the invention of lines in Eimear's book like morning deliveries bleep us headachely from dreams, or they stir to the sound of a phone's plastical chime, or more searching and reflective confessional, sucky and sake, and or highly critical and analytic. How did the anguish and disruption of Heartbreak give these 3 characters a new voice?
You touch the mic first.
Okay. Well, the narrator, who's unnamed, is middle-aged and is experiencing heartbreak for the first time. So in a way, he's 17 again, I guess, or whenever you're supposed to have your first heartbreak. But he has, hopefully, the experience and the intelligence of someone who's lived much longer. So he's both feeling and analyzing at the same time. So he can pull the lens out, which I think is something that maybe we couldn't do at 17 to the same degree. Add to that he's super anxious and may have OCD, spoiler alert. But all of these things play a role in I think, bringing the voice out, and add the structure too. It's an epistolary novel, so he gets to sort of keep repeating the form. Add to that they are emails that he doesn't send because he doesn't want to break any boundaries, and they're on the suggestion of his therapists, and he has 2 of those, but they don't know about each other. So, there's a lot. As you can see, the setup makes for sort of a neurotic or anxious voice, and I think that couples well with the excruciating pain of heartbreak, which is all-consuming, or it can be all-consuming.
I love that answer. I guess for me, for my narrator, this is also not a spoiler, it's like right there in the jacket flap, but she finds out her husband is having an affair with a woman named Maggie, and that kind of causes like the total like rupture of their marriage. And I think then she becomes really obsessed with like her kids' bedtime stories and kind of infusing them with like these different Chinese myths that her mom used to tell her when she was growing up. And so I think the heartbreak has kind of allowed her to re-examine the own myth that she's been telling herself about her marriage. I mean, who among us has not dated someone like a little bit longer than we should because the meet cute story was like so good? And yeah, I think the heartbreak really just allows her to like take the reins back of her own life and kind of re-examine how she's been telling herself this story of herself.
Well, I think in The City Changes Its Face, it's the heartbreak of 2 people who really love each other and want to be together and really care for each other and are trying very hard to make things work out, but sometimes things go wrong. And so it's a different kind of heartbreak. It's not no one's leaving anyone, no one's done anything terrible to anyone, but it is the heartbreak that can accompany a kind of a committed relationship when, even with all the best of intentions, sometimes things aren't working out and pain is there.
Yeah, all 3 books actually explore both passive and active heartbreak, doing the breaking versus being broken. How do you think about that split in your characters' lives?
I don't know if there is a split in City, because I think it is so much about people who are trying hard, who are imperfect, who are struggling with difficult things in their pasts and are not necessarily very well equipped for dealing well with difficult things inside a relationship, but really want to try and make it work out. And both of them have different ways of solving problems. Stephen, sex has always been his answer to every problem. And at this juncture, Eiley, the young woman, she would like to not talk about what the problems are and just use some sex to fix things. And for the first time, he's saying, well, no, actually, I think we need to talk about it. So they've kind of reversed roles, and that leads to sort of more confusion, I think.
God, I think that's almost more heartbreaking, right? When it's 2 people that really are trying. I feel like in the case of my novel, it's kind of the opposite, where like one person is 1 foot out the door already. He's kind of already made this decision, right? Like even when he tells her about this affair that he's had, he doesn't ask for her, forgiveness. He's kind of like, this has happened and I've made this decision. So her role in this breakup does feel kind of passive at first. But I think what she does with it is kind of the more interesting part, and hopefully it's the crux of the mom. It's my mom, everyone. She hates when I call her out.
She feels really bad. I have a direct line to her face.
I think that was the end of my answer. I think that was time's up.
I can't top that. I think it's interesting because the narrator's been dumped, and like I said before, he's not getting any responses to these emails. We're really processing this relationship and his neurosis and the politics of the world through his perspective. But it's a polyamorous setup. Everyone here know what polyamory is? Actually, it doesn't really matter. I was just curious. And so I think they're madly in love. So maybe more like Eimear's situation. There isn't a problem between them. It's more like the rest of the world, and the complications of this setup have made it so that like it's like Bridges of Madison County in a way, but like queer and set in Brooklyn. And they they would continue if the rest of the world were supportive, I think. But it trickles down. It's not as simple as that. It's not like, oh, I'm leaving because there isn't a TV show that represents our our family. It's that I haven't been able to process what it would mean to have two partners and to share love, and I only think of it as a scarce resource, and so that's how I was raised and that's how I was trained, and so anything outside of that feels so wild and crazy that I'm having trouble imagining a future even though I'm madly in love with you. So in that way it's passive because it's sort of, the narrator feels that it's happened to him, and so yeah.
There's a great line in Middle Spoon that maybe the world should adapt to us and not us to it. I love that. And we'll get to romantic heartbreak, but that makes me think, in these stories, how does romantic heartbreak butt up against different kinds of grief?
You're first this time.
Oh, I'm first this time. Okay, so yeah, the narrator in my novel, she's right. Her husband is leaving her, and then immediately after, she's diagnosed with breast cancer. So I think there's also the grief of, thinking about the way that her own future might unfold. And she's kind of, as she's going through this diagnosis, her own mother had passed from breast cancer. At the time that she actually met her husband, that was like she was coming from, like right off the heels of her own mother's funeral. So I think all these things happening at once has kind of caused her to, again, kind of like unravel the story of her life that she's been kind of recounting to herself. But I think, and I'm thinking about what you were just saying about like envisioning a future together. And I think romantic love is so interesting because usually that kind of break and that kind of grief is like, it feels like it dictates your future in a way that like a friend breakup might not. And I think that that's so interesting that we tie love to our own future trajectory so much.
I guess I'll deny this later, but we're being recorded, so whatever.
We are.
I was going through a bit of grief when the idea came to write the book, and I was fascinated by the process itself. And so my background is in public health, so I just started looking up what grief does to the body, like what is exactly happening. And the relationship between heartbreak and death, they're similar. They're attacking similar parts of the body and the brain. And don't ask me for more detail than that because it's been a couple of years since I did that reading. But there's something to it. I mean, I think it's very different, obviously. And at one point he says, the narrator, he's like, I'm so distraught, but the only thing that would be worse is if you didn't exist in this world. So even he can imagine that, like, okay, this is terrible, but I still want you to be out there. I don't know if maybe because one day we could make this work again, or just because there's nothing worse than it being finite. And a breakup is finite to you, but not to your existence. And so in that way, I distinguish, but I also empathize with both in a similar vein. They both get flowers and a day off, ideally. Yeah.
True.
I think in City, it's a different kind of grief. Eileen and Stephen, when the book begins, they've been together for 2 years, and it's been a very sort of passionate love affair. But they've reached that point where life is starting to come in and invade. Things are settling down. Problems are raising their heads, and one of the big aspects of the book is that Stephen's long estranged daughter returns to his life, and she's only 2 years younger than Eileen, and that obviously causes tremendous disruption. And while they all sort of want to make this very odd and awkward situation work out, I think for Eileen there is also a kind of a grief for the simplicity of what was beforehand. When it was just 2 people in a room, now there's 3 people in a flat, and bodies having to make accommodations for the arrival of others, for her a stranger, and for Stephen, a joy, but also a stranger, this person who they have to learn to incorporate, and that life they shared before is now suddenly gone, and that's a source of grief for her.
That's true. And I wonder if you can all talk about triangles in your books. We got a lot of 3s here. 3+.
Okay. Fine. So happily married public health professor. Dang, again, admitting too much. Happily married public health professor, has the house, the kids, the life you presumably you want, and then falls madly in love with someone who's about 10 years his junior. And after a year, he decides it's not going to work, the boyfriend, and disappears. And so now this man is balancing all of those other things with heartbreak. I think this is why it's much easier to date when you don't have a family and kids, and because trying to balance it all is quite terrible, as you can see in this book right here. So I think some of the grappling that he does in the book is what I was referring to earlier, is that there are not many models, not models for how to triangulate love in a way, because the boyfriend and the husband are not together. So in the parlance of polyamory, the narrator is the hinge in this situation. And he is kind of, all of the emotions are traveling in these two different directions, but they're not crossing. So the third end, or the third leg of that triangle, is not filled in. Not yet, but that's part of the reason I think it doesn't work. Not because the other two people aren't together, but because to fully incorporate and have these long-lasting relationships, there has to be not just a transparency of what's happening, but really, I think, some kind of enmeshing or entangling of all the parts, so that it's like real, as opposed to just this fantasy life that, in my case, the narrator was living.
Isn't there a dating app called Hinge? Is it for polyamory? It
You know,
should be. It's
I
a
don't.
good
I know there is a
analogy.
Hinge, but I don't think it's for. Is it for poly? Does anyone know?
It should be.
No.
It's a great analogy.
I'm getting
Libby
some
knows.
surreptitious nods.
Libby
Yeah.
doesn't know. Sorry, I digress.
No, that's important.
That's important for us all to know.
It's good to get that right. I guess in my book, it's not even so much as a triangle as it is like two lines that have kind of gone off this way, and they've kind of shut the door on our narrator. I feel like it does not exist in this like triangular state for very long, just because, again, this decision has kind of been made for her. I'm also thinking about, this is not so much like a love triangle, but she, as you can probably tell in the early pages that I read, like, she kind of feels also outside the door of even like her own, family, right? Like her two children, tend to favor her partner. Actually, they laugh with him in this way that they don't laugh with her. That's also not a triangle. I guess that's four things, but it feels like a shape that you've kind of been carved out of, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yes, as I said, this triangle is created between Eileen, Stephen, and his daughter Grace, and I think for all of them, it's trying to work out who owns what part of who has the rights to certain things. I think Eileen feels intimidated by Grace's presence because Grace is his daughter, and she will always be his daughter, and that is an unbreakable bond. But Grace is also, anxious around Eileen because she knows that Eileen knows her father much better, knows about his life and his past, knows his secrets in a way that she doesn't, and also has to turn to her to ask, can I ask him about this thing? Can I talk to him about that thing? How will he react? Will he close up? And so both of them are kind of busily trying to work out how to weigh the situation between them, and Stephen is kind of stuck in the middle, who sort of loves them both and is terrified of losing them, either of them, and just desperately wants things to work out between them, but kind of goes about it in the wrong way.
Yeah. Could you share a little about the seed of your novel, like the moment or image that first came to you?
I think City's been with me for a long time because it takes up the story of two characters from an earlier novel, The Lesser Bohemians, although it's a standalone novel by itself. And I suppose I'm interested in actors. So Stephen is a well-established actor in London. Eileen is a drama student. And I think the beginning of of them really was that interest in how actors kind of wear an outside that sometimes sits very far from their inside, and how they kind of find each other through the kind of various guises of self. They kind of dig down until they eventually find all the mess inside.
I guess for me, Maggie started as like a short story, as like a couple of different short stories that I ended up kind of pulling together. One of the stories was about breast cancer. It runs in my family. It's something that I feel like I've been trying and failing to write about for a really long time. And then the other thing about it, though, is I usually tend to write in the realm of like magical realism. You know, I like something weird happening in everything. And when I started writing Maggie, I was sort of like, okay, new challenge for myself. No more magic. You're like restricted to the rules of the real world. And I was kind of curious to see what I would reach for instead. And that ended up being humor and comedy. I think those things can kind of function in very similar ways in stories. And also, I was probably coming off the heels of some very minor heartbreak. I could not even tell you who it was about now. But because I'm a Scorpio, I was like, okay, this heartbreak is going in it. I'm going to raise the stakes. It's going to be about divorce. And I kind of threw all those things together, and that was 3 seeds that kind of became this guy here.
I've kind of been interested in I'm also a Scorpio, by the way. I've kind of been interested in the ways that we handle stressful events in life, and I know so much of that has to do with how the brain was formed in utero and in the first 300 days. And so I know that's a little dorky, but that has always interested me. And so when it came to Heartbreak, I thought, okay, well, there are people who, when the vacuum cleaner isn't working and they're a little stressed out, will like kick it, and then there are people who will like go to the internet and download the instructions and be like, all right, this is what's wrong with it, and this is the part I need to order. And so I wondered if, when it came to something as stressful as grief, if it were similar, if the people who kicked the vacuum cleaner were also the people who really lost it and were walking down the street crying inconsolably, you know, in the middle of the day, and were obsessing and writing emails and had 2 therapists and all, you know, the 9-year. And so that's sort of where it came from, this idea that I wanted to explore what a massive life change like heartbreak could be, not under just those circumstances, but under the duress of someone who doesn't handle stress well to begin with. You know?
All these books are about intimacy under pressure cooker of affairs and children and illness and cultural shifts that are all pressing on those romantic relationships. Maybe could you talk about, maybe it's explicitly in Alejandro's the most, but self-sabotage and characters kind of acting against their own self-interests in that cooker. I don't know if that's...
I'm wondering...
Also secrecy, like how secrecy operates differently in these books.
Well, I think the secrecy in my book refers to the narrator being in this unconventional romantic situation and doesn't know how to tell some of the people he cares most about in this world. So he's lived the relationship secretly, and now he's living the breakup secretly. And it's much easier to lie when you're happy, or to not care if you're lying. But when you're miserable, then it sort of compounds it because it starts to feel like shame. And so that's where some of that comes from, that secrecy. But what was the first part of your question? It wasn't secrecy. You said something else.
I might have lost it. Self-sabotage?
Self-sabotage, good one. I'm a Scorpio. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, he says something at some point. He refers to being very concerned with the boyfriend cheating on him, and then he's convinced that the boyfriend is cheating on him with this friend because he sees the way they're looking at each other at a party, and he goes down this rabbit hole of like insecurity and doubt, and may or may not be OCD, and then at some point he's like, oh, well, now I think about that exclusively when I'm having sex with my boyfriend. So why is he thinking about this really painful thing in this moment of passion? And it's maybe like that's when you get control over the thing that most scares you, is what he argues. And so in a way, sometimes I think self-sabotage is sure, I don't deserve X, Y, or Z, but I think it might also be like, I'm gonna be the one that brings me down. No one else will. And that's a form of control.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think you were really your most true version of yourself when the rug has kind of been pulled out from under you, right? Because like no one else then, you're kind of at this like starting point.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I feel like my narrator does not have much time for self-sabotage. She's a mother of 2. She's got this like devastating diagnosis, and even though this like horrible affair has been enacted on her, she kind of just still has to like wake up in the morning, get the kids to school, make her doctor's appointments. So I think the other part of your question was about secrecy, and the big thing. And again, I don't think there's such a thing as a spoiler in my book. But she doesn't. She actively decides not to tell her soon-to-be ex-husband about her diagnosis. And I think that secrecy, even though a lot of people in my life were like, "What? That's crazy. Why would she do that?" I think for her, kind of, again, this form of like taking back control, this secrecy. She's sort of like, you've decided not to be part of my life, and so you really will not be, and I'm going to shut the door on you for once. And I think that kind of gives her a little bit of power back.
Well, I think Eileen is excellent at the art of self-sabotage. I think she's arrived at a point in her life where she thinks she wants something different out of the life that she will have as her chosen profession, and yet she has been so invested in this idea of herself as an actor that she finds it very hard to disengage from it, and there's so much of her is invested in this notion that she then sort of sets out to secretly sabotage this and ends up doing something which is really much worse and much more damaging to her than simply having changed her mind and taking the consequences would have been. And that's part of her youth, the fact that she's 20, and it's hard to understand that you are different to the person you thought you were. At that age. I think as you get older, there are so many aspects of yourself that you have to learn to put up with or accept or understand. But at 20, when you're first confronted with I'm not the person I thought I was, it's hard for her to take responsibility for that.
Alejandro mentioned shame. I wonder if you guys can talk about how shame, what role shame plays in the novels, and also forgiveness.
Well, I'm Irish, so shame is all for me. I love it. I can't get enough of it. All of my novels are soaked with characters tormented with shame and self-loathing. And it's just because it causes so many difficulties for each character. It causes so many problems, the inability to accept it, the inability to overcome it. They also have kind of shame that comes from some, very traumatic things, both of them in their childhoods. And so for me, I'm so interested in how it can crush so much joy out of life, how hard it can make life be. And it is not something that you are in control of. It is something that's imposed upon you. It's something that you're reared to cultivate inside yourself. So it is your own sort of special cultural, religious, whatever, self-sabotage that you bring along with you. So, I love it. If shame disappeared from the world, I would have to just get a different job.
I agree. I'm in favor of shame. Because I think, what is shame but the idea of personal accountability and responsibility, but with the dial turned a little bit up in some cases, right? I think for our narrator here, I think she does feel a little bit of shame that her husband does not feel shame. I should say this. He's rich white guy, straight man. I'm looking at all of the oil paintings up here. Sorry, they're really staring at me. And I think he, again, with his upbringing, he was never really forced to take like personal responsibility or accountability for anything. So I think he does not feel very much shame over what is happening in their marriage at all. I think with her, what's really complicated is that her white husband has left her for a white woman, and I think there is this kind of shame that she feels about that. I think there's something, very like internalized there, and it kind of forces her to, kind of say, well, she's Chinese American. Was this like an experiment that he married me? And the fact that he's ending up with someone who kind of shares his background, someone who is also, not ashamed of what they've done, like, how does that play into the story of her marriage that she thought she had? Yeah.
I think if the shame is sort of a way to keep your moral compass pointed in the right direction, that's a really great thing, like, oh, I should feel bad about killing this person, right? But if it's external, not so great. And I think in this book, but frankly in everything I write, the way shame comes into the picture is it's usually me and then the narrator living the discomfort of conformity. And so anytime he steps away from what's expected of him, whether it's political or sexual or you name it, that's where shame creeps in. But I am curious in questioning that conformity. And so this book, for example, could be read as a poly novel, I guess, but it really was more a question of like, why am I not questioning things more often? And so the narrator goes down this rabbit hole of emotions, but he's questioning society and why he does things. And if I may invoke George Michael for a second, as every good literary panel should, he did an interview, I don't know when, I saw it on the internet after I finished writing the book, and he said something as simple as, when you're growing up as a gay person, you're told this is totally wrong, man, woman, make baby, and if you don't fit with that, you think you're wrong for a long time. But when you finally break through and you're like, there's nothing wrong with me, there's something wrong with society, then it's really quite difficult to not question absolutely everything else about society. Because this one was like a major one, and you were told this is the way it's supposed to be. And so if society is wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? Like police, I don't know, Israel, you name it. And so that was some of the motivation for me for the book, and that's what I think about when I think about shame. Really, it's like breaking through the conformity of what's expected of you.
Mm-hmm.
Feel bad for going so pro shame.
Well, these are fantastic books, and we've talked about a lot of heavy subjects, but I had so much fun reading them. I'm going to ask one last question, and then there's about 5 minutes to ask any Q&As. But yes, love and connection in these books feels fragile, sometimes combustible. The body is in crisis. These characters are under duress. What, if anything, gives these characters hope?
In my case, may I?
Yeah,
it's okay.
please.
Sorry. In my case, the narrator has kids, right? And that's not me being pro-kid, by the way, but the original title of the book was A Children's Guide to Heartbreak, but no one really liked that title. So the middle spoon in this really, it doesn't refer to like the actual intimacy of big spoon, little spoon, and middle spoon. It refers to his place in society, caught between two partners, two therapists, his parents, his kids. And when he's going through the pain of all this, he's thinking about how you really are not prepared for heartbreak. Like no one, sure, Taylor Swift, but like not really a lesson. No one ever, and his parents were constantly like, don't do this and don't do that and don't turn your back to the ocean and don't do all these other things, but actually prepare you for some of the worst pain you're ever going to experience. I don't remember that lesson. And so he's going through thinking about how it's the circumstances of his pain keep him from talking to his parents about it, but he's in a lot of pain, right? And he doesn't want that relationship with his kids. So he tries to be fully transparent with them without sort of rocking their world. So that's part of the book. And in a way that does, I think there for me is the hope that, our dynamics and can change in our human relationships so that we can be more transparent than we have been in the past.
I think in my book, even though she does have kids, the answer is actually her best friend, Darlene. I think we do this thing in society where we put like marriage and like romantic love above absolutely everything else. And I think for my narrator, like her best friend has always been there for her since like day one of college. I had the best time writing the best friend character. I put like bits and pieces of all of my best friends into it, which has been so fun now that they get to read the book because it's out in the world. They've been texting me being like, hey, this detail is me. And that's kind of fun. But yeah, it's her best friend. It's her ride or die best friend that is like always there for her, and they're going to get through it together. Her best friend who like goes to every doctor's appointment with her, who takes her to, you know, Barnes and Noble so they can be kind of anonymous instead of going to their local indie bookstore where everyone knows them. When they're trying to look for like books on like divorce, it's yeah, I think there's something really special and irreplaceable about that relationship.
Well, I think for Ali and Stephen, it's love. Love is the hope. I think it has allowed them to find each other, to overcome a lot of difficult things, a lot of heartbreak of their childhoods, a lot of their own issues with addiction or with self-harm or lots of other things over the time that they have been together. And it has taken particularly Stephen out of a place of despair. And I think love inspires them to endure, that even on this night that the novel happens over, when things are hard between them and they're afraid of not being able to fix it, love is the thing that they hold on to, and that is the hope that will force them to overcome everything that's hard.
And it sets so much in motion, as these books all show. So I think, do we have a minute or? Okay, anybody?
Hello, happy Sunday.
Thank you.
So heartbreak can feel like very confusing, or just like the grief can feel so heavy. How did you orient your characters in like a time and place so that readers can follow like whatever spiral that they're going through, especially when like they didn't choose the situation that they're currently in?
I very actively tried not to anchor my character, my reader, in time and place for the duration of the story. So if you flip through, you'll see there's no like chapters, there's no like, you know, Brooklyn, the year is 2000, you know, none of that. And it's funny because a lot of the feedback that I got early on was that I should structure it in chapters and that I should kind of have these like very clear delineations of like where we are in time and location. But for me, I actually really wanted to mimic the experience that you're talking about, right? This feeling of like free falling in grief and heartbreak when diagnosis happens and you're grieving and mourning a loved one, anything like that. Yeah, I wanted to mimic that experience of like kind of the waves just keep hitting you. And I felt that if I was to put a chapter break or something like that, that's kind of like a natural breather, right? That's like the writer giving you permission to put the story down. And because in real life you don't get those, I was like, absolutely no chapter breaks. You will be in this spiral with her.
I think I went the opposite route. There are 72 unsent emails that constitute this book. And they're not all to Ben, who broke the narrator's heart. Some are to his parents, to his kids, to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, to the Department of Sanitation, to the National Institutes of Health. He really starts to use these missives as a way to process his anxiety and the pain that he's going through. And initially, because they're unsent, he can write as many as he wants, right? He doesn't have to worry about how they're landing or who's being hurt by them or not. Initially, it occurred to me, I thought, why don't I write them all in one day. Like that's what this sort of scattered, frenetic, heartbroken brain would want to do. But I want to know more, and why didn't this work out? And this is what I think actually happened, and so on and so forth. And I had to push myself to say, no, let's capture the initial part of this heartbreak, because that was the point. I really wanted to transcribe this super anxious, grieving brain onto the page. And also because I think, here's the thing about heartbreak that I've discovered. In the process of writing the book, I interviewed everyone in my life, and I was shocked at how many people had experienced heartbreak before. Absolutely everyone I interviewed had a story, except for one person, and they happen to be in this room right now, but I won't tell you who it is. And but everyone had a story, and it was so meaningful. I mean, they'd been happily married for 20-something years, and they could still remember that heartbreak from before. And the thing I heard most often was, I think I'm going to cry right now, while they were recounting this to me. And I thought, but everything's better. Like, what's going on? So I was just thinking about how this pain can be all-consuming and stay with you for so long. And that's kind of what I was trying to capture. My hope was that whoever picked up the book, a little bit like a literary EMDR, you sort of unfold the negative memory and the pain, and then you fold it back up in, your sweater drawer or whatever. But I thought it was important that I capture all of those moments, the difficult ones, the annoying ones, really the annoying ones, because that's the thing about heartbreak is your world is falling apart, but you're okay because of the way people look at you when you're talking to them about it, They're not freaking out because you think you're dying, right? But then that person doesn't look like they're talking to someone who's dying, so then you must not be dying. It's going to be okay. And so I was trying to communicate that. Yeah.
I think for me, it was quite a difficult challenge because I started off, I wanted the whole book to just be two people in a room over the course of one night. So that's how it started. And I got about 6 pages in, and then I ran completely aground. And I thought, what? I'm pretty sure I have spent many nights talking to or at others and not run out of things to say after 6 pages worth of dialogue. What's going on here? And when I thought about it, I sort of realized that, of course, as people, everywhere we go, we bring our past with us. And when you have two people with a very entwined past, that past is going to be very present between them, and very soon and very suddenly and very palpably. And by trying to leave the past behind and just go ahead with this contemporary conversation, I had sort of pulled all the guts out of the potential for emotional connection and for the reader really to deeply feel immersed in what was happening between them. So then I realized I was going to have to go back and start to tell the story of what had happened in the previous 2 years. So the novel now functions going back and forth between the night and the previous times that they've been together. So yeah, it was a difficult technical challenge for me. I'm quite lazy, so I don't like technical.
Anyone for another question?
I see one.
We got one.
Hi, I am so intrigued by the plots of each of your books. I'm just curious. I mean, heartbreak obviously is such a tremendous feeling, emotion, experience, and all of these characters are so unique. Are there any pieces of you all in your characters? Are there any specific pieces that are autobiographical, or do you feel that, there are specific traits that you've written in that reflect yourself?
Oh, I think it's all me all the time. Everyone, in every book. It's all just some little part of myself that I have plucked out and expanded and then allowed to, invent their own path and the life that they will lead on the page. I think for me, the most specifically autobiographical element is really the London setting. And and London is like a third character in this novel, especially that London that I had known in the early 90s when I went there as a drama student. And and I really wanted the novel to be imbued with that sense of excitement and drama and what it is to be young and to leave a small town and come to the big city and, you know, where your mother can't see what you're doing and you do everything. and so for me, that is kind of the most literally autobiographical element of the novel, is really the recreation of London.
I love this question. I feel like this is my first book, and people keep telling me I'm youngish. So, and I think like something that happens with debut novels is people really expect them to be like totally autobiographical. So I've been walking into a lot of rooms lately, and people look at me and they're kind of like, "Huh, you don't look like a divorced mother of two. I guess you did not write what you know," which I think is the advice that we're usually given as writers. For me, I feel like I put a lot of myself into it, but not in like a one-to-one way, right? Where like the plot of my life does not follow the plot of my character's life. I feel like I wrote what I knew like emotionally, but not in like like a one-to-one way. I had a good time giving character traits of myself to kind of all the characters, so all me in that sense. But even, this would be my like big tip for you, is I think it's important to give even your like quote unquote like villain characters maybe aspects of yourself as a way to not hate them or make them so terribly deplorable on the page. So I mean, there are even like bits and pieces of me in the ex-husband character, and yeah, just fun to mix and match that way.
I think my answer is a combination of both of their answers.
The middle spoon?
Yeah, the middle spoon answer. My first two books, I didn't think were autobiographical at all. I didn't think so. I mean, obviously, I'm not a therapist. But this one, I did borrow much more from my life. Usually, I mean, the heartbreak is the thread, but it helps me to explore a lot of other things and ideas that I'd like to. And so I share somewhat of a political perspective or lens with my narrator, and I think that comes through. But he's taller than me, so fiction, okay?
I think that's a great place to end. Thank you all for coming. And I do want to say to anyone here, because they are in the thick of it, thank you for being here. And there is another side. You'll get to the other side if anyone is struggling. Yeah.
I just want to say that all of our parents call us after these events and they say, "How many books did you sell?" Okay, right?
My mom is right here. She's gonna ask.
Yeah. My dad's gonna call me in about 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, my
And
mother's going to
to
call me in
that
5
end-
hours from Ireland.
Yes,
So,
that's
you
right.
know.
To that end, books will be available for sale. When you leave Borough Hall, head down the steps. They'll be signing them, courtesy of Powerhouse Books. Thank you to Powerhouse Books for selling them. And thank you to our panel.